Hi everyone, welcome to my first ever video! Recently, I've been binge watching many Let's Plays to satisfy my nostalgia. One of them is Undertale by Toby Fox. For those who are unaware, Undertale is a role-playing game which include battling enemies and decisions which impact the gameplay. I would highly recommend checking it out if you haven't seen it yet. I won't spoil too much of the game. I really recommend you guys check it out. It's a really cool game. It spawned many iconic characters, including my personal favorite, Sans himself. This skeleton man has that chill yet powerful personality, which to me and many other people made it a fan favorite. I want him to have in my collection. So bad. So with that being said, bring out the doll. I was about to use this doll I found in an online pre-love item shop. It is the Crayola Madame Alexander doll collaboration. She looks really ugly to be honest and desperate, need of a glow up. However, I didn't like the material they've used and the height didn't fit the requirement. So I've searched my collection and found a cheapo doll I found in Shopee. I've bought loads of these and even made a video just to customize them. I personally like them, but the proportions made me cringe. The arm proportion didn't fit the torso. However, it does fit the size requirement. So it's time to do a little side quest. Looking at the footage, the proportions of this doll, if cut immediately, will get interfered. So you had to get another doll. So this is where she comes in, as the joints will get interfered if we just continue on with the process of just using the first doll. Now I firstly marked the doll on the areas needed to be cut. Using my cutting tools, I mercilessly cut the doll's arms and legs to get the parts I needed. I started with the torso to lengthen it as well. I want him to have that slight height compared to the original doll. Then the limbs. And by the way, for my safety, I actually did most of the cutting inside my sandbox so that I would be safe. Now after getting the needed parts, time to put them back together. I'm gonna be using sticks and glue to put them back together. I stabbed the stick into a pre-drilled hole and glued it in place. Now in this shot, I used a glue gun, but it didn't stick. The glue doesn't have that clutch power, so I decided to finally buy super glue. Little did I know, that super glue became the MVP of this episode. Well, this custom anyways. I used super glue off camera because I don't know how to use it in front of the camera, so I got embarrassed. Well, anywho, the super glue thing was actually inspired by Studson Studios' creation of Ganondorf, where he used super glue and baking soda, which is really amazing, and it really experimented me on this project. And surprisingly, it worked too well. Well, I tried to sand it using my sandpaper, but it cannot do it. So I decided to sand it using my rotary tool. Right now, I'm using my rotary tool to shape down the limbs to form more like a bony structure. That includes the arms, the forearms, and the leg area. Here's the aftermath of sanding and carving. So far it looks really nice, but there are some holes that need to be filled. So time to use my 2-part epoxy sculpt to apply on the needed areas. It dries via chemical reaction, making it as solid as a rock. However, my brand is kinda garbage to sculpt however. So it's so sticky that you need water to serve as lubricant, but it ends up being a weird slop. However, I can't get any other alternatives to where I live, so till then, I had to suck up with this brand. I also used it to sculpt the meat of the bones, as well to make it a little bit more stronger. Let's move on to the face. Because this is a skull, we must have those concave structures in the eyes and space for teeth later. I trimmed his face to make it more flat. I also tried to pop his eyes, but to no avail. Off camera, I cut off the entire face to have more freedom in sculpting the face. It left me, however, with a wobbly structure and some holes from the ears and hair plugs, and could lead to cracking if not addressed. So off camera, I filled them inside with clay, and here's what he looks like so far. I also tried super glue and baking soda technique for the hair plugs. Turns out it delivered way too well, as it's harder to sand without using the rotary tool, but that is for the struggle later. Right now we are going to fill up the gaps left from the epoxy using air dry clay. I also decided at one point to carve a hole, because when you look at an actual skeleton, they have this hole in between our legs because it's attached by two bones, and I want that for this doll. However, while doing it, yeah, look at that. Oh, I thought I could do it, but nah. Oh dear, it even ruined this part. Ah, dang it. Alright. However, I did fix it by using baking soda and super glue, and it worked really well and even stronger than my regular epoxy. He also took the opportunity to make his face as well. He's actually simply making two concave holes in the eyes and one for the mouth. I would also like to shout out Undertale Dolls for giving some tips and tricks in her video on how to make Sans face. It made it 10 times more easier, and if you're wanting to recreate Sans, I would highly recommend going to her video. I would not really explain my process, because she made it 10 times more easier to explain compared to I would do it. So I would just show you how I did it in time-lapse. However, I also like to mention that Undertale Dolls uses polymer clay while doing Sans. I, on the other hand, had to use air dry clay, so I would recommend sculpting and then leave it to dry if you are completely satisfied, so in order to not squish some parts and then come back to another layer. So basically, patience is the game if you're going to do with air dry clay. Now, while waiting for the clay to dry, I decided to make his clothes. So here are the fabrics I'm gonna be using. And I love how these turned out. The shorts even has a drawstring, oh my gosh! The jacket, I actually took some creative liberties. I used a towel for that fur look, as most cosplayers actually use a fur look on their cosplays. Now back to the head. It's more on adding details and sanding at this point. While sculpting, I realized that Sans doesn't really have a round shape. It has a divot on the side, so I took my rotary tool with a diamond bit and carved it. I also decided to fill the head with clay, as sand marks aren't as pleasing to see off camera. Finally, after days and days of sculpting and sanding, it's now finally time to set this doll up for success. Or at least, what I thought so. I'm still not satisfied with the seams in some areas, so I decided to smooth some seams out, and it turns out it is a mistake, especially to the head. So basically what I did is I put varnish, cut it with water, and then mix it, and then apply it to the doll. It did, however, work for the body, but because the head is made out of air dry clay, for some reason, I don't know why, it doesn't stick to the surface and creates this weird feeling where it just peels off, which you will see in a bit. I then let the varnish dry for some time. You may be wondering, when will I make the eyes and the teeth? Well, this is where I'm gonna start sculpting the teeth. So, I want this teeth to not be in air-dried clay, but in foam clay. Foam clay is perfect for simple shapes like this, but sadly cannot be sanded. This is why I ended up doing this for the last part. I placed it inside the jaw and using my blade, scored some teeth marks. I then let it dry for a while. Once dry, I'm going to make the eyes. Now San has 2 white pupils in the game, but sometimes it can change to no pupils at all when he becomes serious, and his iconic 1 blue-eyed look when he becomes powerful. I want that versatility to this doll, so I decided to use pins. Not only that it has a spherical shape, but it can be easily switched out for his other looks. It also has a bonus of an optical illusion of the pupils following you, which will be seen later. In order to put the pins into the eyes, I actually stabbed it to the air-dried clay, which is actually soft, surprisingly. I cut the pin to the appropriate height and stick it using my pliers for more control. Once the eyes are done, I can finally paint this doll. So I actually found a primer that I wanted to try so bad, and I tried it onto this doll, but because the varnish did not stick well, it ended up sticking to my mat, which created this little hole, and then ended up peeling it all off. Especially also into the vinyl, it also made it very sticky, so I decided to just switch my route to using gesso. I decided to use gesso fully for this doll instead of using acrylics, which became also an issue. I didn't expect it to crack because gesso actually does not have that elasticity compared to acrylics. So I actually also have to paint the whole body with another coat of acrylic just to combat the cracking. Basically, this doll is error up to error up to error at this point. Now time to paint his face. I actually did the majority of it off camera because I really need to focus and shove the doll next to my eyes just to concentrate. But basically I used black paint and then painted the concave inside of the skull to add more shadow and also to the concave areas of the bone. I finally bought myself some chalk pastels, and after using it, shadows are everything to me. It emphasizes his head more compared to without it actually. I also painted the bone detail using some dotting tools. I could have carved it down, but I don't have the confidence to do so, so I'm gonna rely on paint on it. I decided last minute to do some little body blushing onto the bones in order to emphasize it a little bit more. After all of that, I sprayed the entire doll with my Bosny flat clear. Now it's finally time to dress up the doll. Oh, you thought I forgot about the shoes, do you? Well, here they are! I actually got these shoes off of a Japanese surplus store, and these actually spearheaded the project. And obviously, Sans doesn't wear bunny-eared shoes, but this is just for me actually. This is just for me. They're so cute and adorable, I had to use them instead of making them. So, otherwise, he's actually done. Also, here's the illusion thing I mentioned earlier in the video. Look at that, isn't that cool? It actually looks really creepy once displayed, but to be honest, it's so cool. I just have to keep that.
Big